Evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Francesco, founder of Positive Psychology Directory. I'm here tonight with Dr. Aaron Jarden, president of the New Zealand Association of Positive Psychology. Hi, Aaron. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Aaron, please tell us a bit more about yourself and how you got involved into positive psychology.
Okay, sure. So at the moment, I'm a senior lecturer in psychology at Auckland University of Technology, where I teach and supervise a lot of PhD students on positive psychology type topics. I'm also founder and editor of the International Journal of Wellbeing, which is an interdisciplinary journal on wellbeing, bringing together philosophy, economics, psychology, and many of the other social sciences to talk about wellbeing science, and a heavy component of that is positive psychology. I'm also currently president of the New Zealand Association of Positive Psychology here in New Zealand, so that's the biggest psychology association we've got here. It has roughly 1,700 members, which in comparison to the New Zealand Psychological Society, which has about 900, it's roughly kind of twice the size. It's a flourishing organisation. It's been up and running now for, I think we're almost at 6 years. Other than that, I help out with a range of businesses, one called Assessing Wellbeing in Education, which does school wellbeing assessments. Another one called Work on Wellbeing, which does wellbeing evaluation and assessments in organisations, and another one now called Plus Wellbeing, which does online e-learning programs and wellbeing. So I guess I have a wide-ranging, broad interest in positive psychology, from the hard science research, geeky side of it, to the practical application. How can we make a real-world dent in positive wellbeing for everyone, across kids to older adults to everyone. I'm really keen lately in the usability aspects of tools and techniques and technologies, and actually the effectiveness side of things. So I get involved in public policy debates and advice and things like that as well. So there's no short, easy answer to your question. I kind of feel like I do a little bit of a lot of things across a broad spectrum of positive psychology. Is the short answer. How did I get into positive psychology? The other part of your question. Well, when I went to university, I started off with a double major in philosophy and psychology. So in the philosophy side of it, I was always interested in ethics. So I studied ethical theory and the good life, and it's obviously a lot of overlap with that, asking the questions, how should we live, and how that relates to positive psychology now as it's forming up. So that's the philosophy side of it. And the psychology side of it, I started off focusing more on social psychology and clinical psychology. And after that, I kind of went off, had some other experiences working in IT and so forth. And then I came back and trained as a clinical psychologist, and got to the end of that training, and then really that's when I discovered positive psychology. And I've kind of been in positive psychology for the last at least 10 years, probably a little bit longer, setting up research projects and learning to be an academic, I suppose. That's when I started being a lecturer in psychology, something like just over 10 years ago now. So I've had a bit of a long path through philosophy and through IT and through clinical psychology to finally arrive at positive psychology. But the standard clinical approach just wasn't working. I mean, I was just a trainee, but the standard clinical approach really wasn't working. And at that point, I really switched focus, much to the dismay of my clinical supervisors, to really infuse a lot of what I'd been reading and learning about in positive psychology. So, rather than the first interview being the standard clinical framework and questions, I'd sit down and talk about what was important to them, try and figure out their values, just try and get examples of what their strengths were. And the first interview with these young men really changed the rapport aspect of therapy from then. So I went from a trainee clinician who was having not much luck with very complex cases to all of a sudden having fantastic success from a therapeutic point of view, with high engagement, high rapport, high treatment efficacy, across the board. And it all really came down to, I think, infusing a little bit of the principles of what I've been learning in positive psychology. So it was kind of at that point that was a real kind of convincer for me. I, of course, got pulled over the stones by the clinical folk who, had every kind of argument under the sun about this being not empirically based, although it was scientifically informed. But there's various kinds of guidelines and whatnot they need to follow. But it was just at that point that I decided I really needed to make the switch if I wanted to improve people's well-being rather than just reduce their ill-being, which I was also interested in. But I think I also left clinical training at that point because I was interested in making a bigger impact than working one-on-one with people. So, I was more interested about how we could spread this through the media and spread it through communities and scale it across countries. And if I was trying all these things out for me and they were making a difference in my life, and I thought, why can't everyone else benefit from this kind of knowledge? I think the same adage that if clinical psychology or traditional psychology was the answer, then we would have seen dramatic decreases in rates of ill-being and illness, but we just haven't seen that. In fact, we've seen the opposite. So I think with modern world and modern stresses and rapid change, and there comes a point where you've just got to question whether you keep trying the same things or not. And I think we're well past that point at this point. So I think investing in the old ways of doing things may not be the best investment for future well-being. But having said that, I'd have to put a lot of caveats around that. The traditional, what we've learned from clinical psychology and traditional psychology, and the efficacy rates that they've obtained for very certain conditions is really spectacular. And it's a bit, the way to phrase that really is, it all depends on the context. Using the right approach at the right time is really the way to go. It's just looking a bit broader and saying, well, what comes after that? Maybe a different approach will follow on better, or maybe a combination of that and something else. I just see that very narrow focus of if you have X, then here is Y, and Y is the answer is not being shown to be proven the best way to go for the majority of things. For some specific things, sure, if you have a phobia of spiders, systematic desensitization is just the way to go. If you have psychosis, drugs are just the way to go. But I think for a hell of a lot of other things, I just don't think the traditional ways that we've approached them have shown in the data to be that effective. And taking a wider, more systemic view on these things and considering other alternatives as a combination or as an addition or as a follow-on or even as a precursor, I think that kind of broader lens is now where we're looking. It's harder, it's more complex, it's potentially more costly, but it's kind of the answer we need.
And positive psychology is relatively new, 20 years or so, but, where do you think is going this field?
Well, this is just the most exciting time, I think, in positive psychology. I think there's a ton of things that we could do to what I call supercharge positive psychology. If you ask me what's the recipe to make positive psychology better over the coming future, it would be things like, I think firstly we need a more coordinated plan on what that future would look like. It's not like you can just access, or somebody said, look, here's the plan. I think various different factions or people within psychology have different plans. Some of them are transparent, some of them aren't. I just think there's kind of a little bit of a coordination issue because a lot of these plans overlap as well. But I think we need more of a solid plan about where this field's going. There's so many good-meaning, good-willed people who have great ideas, and the last thing we want is people going in different directions or butting up against each other. So I think step one is just to become transparent about what the plan is, and ideally be collaborative about that plan as well. So that's the first point. The second point is we've only really touched on a few things. We've only tried out a handful of interventions. We haven't really measured them for very long to see how well they work in the real world either. There's just so much we don't yet know. It's almost like the state of the knowledge is tentative at best. So I think moving forward, we're going to get more solid evidence about what we know works to some degree at this point, but there's so many things that we haven't, and so many other areas that we haven't really touched. But there are cool people working on cool areas, like Lee Waters at the University of Melbourne, where you went through, delving into positive parenting. That's been so needed, and that's going to be such a cool area to open up. But there are just so many other areas where I think positive psychology could move into. So I think that's going to be one of the exciting things. We're going to see it spreading through other disciplines and into other areas as yet unexplored, I'd say. The other thing that I think we could potentially do better is address the critics. So positive psychology has come under all sorts of criticism, and I think some of that's been justified and some of it probably not justified at all, but because I think we can learn a lot from probably about 5 of the top 10 criticisms at least. I think the criticisms which were largely unwarranted and more stage showed for people's egos and reputations, I think we can ignore those ones. But I do actually think there are some that are quite valid, and I don't think we've done as good a job of moving those on and embracing other colleagues in the wider discipline of psychology as potentially we could have. But having said that, in the context of its development, maybe that was a strategic choice, and maybe the time is now to start thinking about that now. So who knows? It's a bit like I said at the start. If we knew what the plan is, answering these kind of questions would be easier. Well, if I did, maybe it's just I'm out of the loop. Who knows? Simplifying its messaging, creating better studies, so going beyond anecdotal evidence and focusing and a focus on theory. So I think we need more complex longitudinal studies in particular. I think we could start a movement beyond academia. So really positive psychology still fits within academia, but I don't think it needs to. So there are other ways to get the messages of positive psychology out there rather than traditional academic ways. I think we could involve more people, so teaching it more widely. So we see a range of certificates from various providers coming about, but I don't think traditional certification education is the only way. We can teach it through various mediums, through blogs, through newspaper, through TV interviews, we could teach it in many ways, but I think we just need to teach it more. I think we could think about our dissemination better, so through public policy, through how we get it into organisations and schools, how we can get the media focused on it. I certainly think we can tailor our wellbeing interventions better by call them supercharging them, just like the example I gave. But most of the interventions are also focused on the individual, so I think we really need to look at collective interventions, so groups and organisations and things that we can roll out in communities. Most of the science really is at the individual level at this moment. And then the last one is really to become more entrepreneurial and embrace technology. If we want to scale and impact a lot of people, whether that be text messaging in Africa or the web in America, whatever, but I just think we need to become entrepreneurial, embrace technology, which academics aren't necessarily good at. So it's about partnering with people that have those skills and have that enthusiasm. And yeah, so there's just some more ideas about how I think some things that we need to do if we want to make a bigger impact. Yeah, I think one of the good things about this positive psychology directory that you're putting together is just the ability and option to network. Like already I can see people doing some things that I didn't know about before. So I'm always keen to find out what people are doing and how it's novel, how it's different. I always try and pin it back to how this is going to make a dent in worldwide wellbeing, whatever they do. People do vastly different things, but if we're to move towards a goal of increasing flourishing in the world, I'm really interested in the translation of the science sort of thing. It's every aspect of academia. Academics are very, very bad at communicating science to the public and translating it into real world impact either. They're good at doing the research and writing up the papers and giving talks and things, but at the end of the day, it's about making a meaningful difference. So when I look at your directory and I find out the businesses that are there and the things that they're doing, I'm looking at people that are making some big impact. So when I just follow them up and see that, so I think just having the ability to connect with them and find out what they do is definitely very valuable. Other than that, I'm kind of happy to chat with anyone who's doing similar things that, where I'm heading off and doing things. So,
Aaron, what's your favorite positive psychology intervention? Like you said, if you can make people less busy, would you be happy? You would be happy. But what's your favorite positive psychology intervention and why?
Yeah, well, one that I really like is one that it's a bit hard to describe, but I kind of made it up. It's essentially a spinning wheel with the 24 character strengths on it, and you spin the wheel and you win a strength, and the challenge is to look at your day through the lens of that strength. So if it's kindness, for example, I set out on my day trying to view my interactions through kindness, or if it's perseverance, so it's given me a new appreciation for all of the character strengths rather than just focusing on my top 5. So there's no research on it at all. It's just I quite like a challenge, and I quite like the novelty of not knowing how my day is going to start, and it's just yeah, it's given me a new appreciation. A different intervention that I've had a lot of success with recently. I pinched off Justin from Geelong Grammar School, where and I've called this the Geelong 3 breath technique. Essentially, it's very, very portable. Positive psychological intervention, which a lot of them aren't, but essentially it's just taking 3 breaths. So you just encourage people to take a deep breath in, and as they breathe out, they physically relax. So the idea is the first breath out, you relax the body. On the second breath out, so second breath, another deep breath, second breath out, you say what you're grateful for right at that moment. So not in the past, not in the future. It's right, you mentally say, right now I'm grateful for whatever you're grateful for. And then on the third breath out, it's about getting into an intentional stance or a frame of reference or a mindset for the upcoming event or whatever you're in. So at that point you say, right now I want to be, and then whatever mindset you want to be, I want to be curious, I want to be open-minded, I want to be critical, however you want to feel in the upcoming interaction with whoever or whatever you're doing, energized, So basically you go through 3 breaths. The first breath relaxes you physically. The second breath taps into a bit of gratitude, so it gets you feeling a bit better. And then the third breath really focuses your energy. So that's something that you can do in literally 3 breaths. And I get a lot of positive feedback that that's a really portable and good exercise. People say they do it before they have a job interview and things like that. They could do it while they're waiting at the lights for it to change. It's just another tool in the belt. That I like the idea that it synergizes a lot of, there's gratitude, there's some relaxation technique, the focusing on the how you want to feel, or your mindset going forward. Most of the people, when I say, well, what did you choose a particular strength, like curiosity or open-mindedness or something like that. So I think there's a really good example of a very portable one which taps into a lot to synergize. So I really like that. I don't use it that often myself, probably once or twice a week, but yeah, there we go. But again, no evidence or empirical research on that at all. But
Aaron, another question that I want to ask you is, what actually can you give away to the public which is free?
That's a great question, and I have a lot of advice on that one. So firstly, I'd say would be a company that I'm involved with called Work on Wellbeing. So workonwellbeing.com. You can go to the website, you can register for free and do a very good wellbeing assessment of your wellbeing, get a free contextualized report, track your wellbeing over time. So I think if you're going to try some of these interventions and you want to figure out what's working and what's not and make changes in your life, I think doing a good evaluation of your wellbeing as a starting point and figuring out the sensitivity of change over time is really good. So a free wellbeing assessment, there's nothing else like it. So workonwellbeing.com. Second thing would be International Journal of Wellbeing. Again, great free resource for the latest current science, which is also really practitioner focused. So we publish a range of things from philosophy, economics, positive psychology more generally, but if you check it out, there's a lot of really interesting articles there. Another thing is the book series, Positive Psychologists on Positive Psychology. So 3 really good free ebooks, interviews with an awful lot of the top positive psychologists on what they think the field is and where it's going and what the next hot topics will be and all those sorts of questions. So again, that's free. Then there's another program called the Tuesday program, which is an online positive psychological intervention based program. Any of these links you can find from my website, aaronjarden.com, but there's some free resources from assessment to intervention to increasing your knowledge across positive psychology. And then, of course, there's the New Zealand Association of Positive Psychology, again, free to join up. And every 3 months you get a newsletter of what's happening around New Zealand, but we also mention what's happening internationally as well. And we do things like review really good books that come out and new apps and so forth. So there's another really good free resource. Yeah, big fan of.
Aaron, as a last question, I wanted to ask you. So if you have to, if you have to give just one piece of advice to everyone, in just one sentence, what would you say?
I'd say the first thing is look after yourself, and I mean that in a sincere way. I think the positive psychology community is full of really great, enthusiastic people, but my clinical training tells me that nobody's immune from rates of ill-being and depression and things like suicidal thoughts and so forth. So even on the face of it, we're in a community of people that are focusing on happiness and flourishing. The assumption that everyone's all happy and doing well, I don't think is right. So I think as a community, it's one thing we haven't talked about at all, or only a couple of people have. But I think when I say look after yourself, I say surround yourself or embed yourself with this community, with people that you can talk about and look after your own well-being. Because if you're struggling and you're not going to use the network or the people that you connect with to help you along that path, it's not so good. Yeah. So look after yourself.
Well, thank you very much, Aaron. That was very pleasant to talk to you tonight.
My pleasure.